Hey guys, Rusty Twinkles here. Doing a reaction video part two of Asmongold talking to Dr. K about the fear of death.
Studied, Hindu mythology or something. And this is the really, really crazy thing. If you look at the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, I don't know if you're familiar with this. I'm going to go into a little bit of history lesson. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, I mean, actually, there's a story that I remember I heard, and it was a guy that kind of ascended to some degree of pseudo heaven, and he was assigned an architect, and this is, I think, part of Hindu mythology. And the architect, he kept wanting to build bigger and bigger castles, and finally, like, the architect was so tired of it that he went and he asked, I think it was Brahma or Vishnu, I forgot which one. And he's like, how can I get this guy to stop wanting bigger and bigger castles? And then the god told him, he's like, this is no problem, I'll solve it. And then the guy had the castle built, and then a bunch of ants marched in to the castle, and each one of the different ants was a former version of himself. And it put in perspective how actually meaningless and how little it really mattered. And I forgot what his name was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a particular story I'm that familiar with, so I don't remember his name. But I think there's kind of an interesting principle, which is like if you look at all the people. So I don't know if you're familiar with this because it sounds like you've studied, Hindu mythology or something, or you're just well read maybe.
A bit. It's a story that I think it made an impact on me, and because it kind of puts into perspective that, like, it's the whole idea of Ozymandias or anything like that, where any accomplishment that you have is always fleeting.
Absolutely. So here's an interesting thing. So like in India, there were 4 castes. There was a caste system.
Yes.
And the highest caste were the Brahmins, the priests. These were the teachers of meditation, the closest to God, et cetera, et cetera. They taught meditation. Below them were the kshatriyas, or the nobility. These were kings, lords, etc. Below them were the Vaishnavas, who were Vaishyas, who were the merchant class, and below them were the Shudras, or the laborer caste. And so let me ask you a question. Which caste do you think produces the most enlightened people?
The last one. Not the workers. The last one.
Probably. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, it depends on, like, what you mean by enlightenment. I mean, obviously you would have the Brahmins, and they're the ones that spend all of their time working towards enlightenment. So that's what would make a lot of sense. But is that really what's true? Because usually, I mean, isn't that just kind of hereditary, what caste you end up in?
Sure, but they're also trained formally in the skills of meditation, right? They're the ones that are the teachers and the experts. And
I don't know.
So it turns out that it's the kshatriyas.
Okay.
So consistently, like, if you think about the incarnations of Vishnu, which, if you want to think about it, like, not from a religious standpoint, but a historical or anthropological standpoint, I think what you can safely assume is that sometimes there have been historical human beings that have been, like, different to the point where, like, they leave a legacy that people assign divinity to.
Like Rasputin.
Right?
Wow.
Like, I mean, that's a borderline one, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think it's a funny example, but possibly, yeah. So what I'm thinking about is, like, if you look at all the enlightened beings from the Indian subcontinent, they're all kings.
Yeah, things like that.
And the question is, like, why is that? If you have the experts in meditation, you have the teachers in meditation, and what the Brahmin does is goes to the king's palace every day, teaches the king how to meditate, and then goes home. Why is it that the king gets enlightened before the Brahmin does? Inconsistently so. And the really interesting answer is because, like, I think it comes back to climbing to the top of the hill. Because at the end of the day, what the Brahmin is taught is that, like, don't climb to the top of the mountain because that's not your job. The top of the mountain will never give you fulfillment. So the Brahmin never climbs to the top. But at the end of the day, they travel to the king's palace every single day. and they see a bigger house, and the king has a prettier wife, and there's all these like the king eats finer food and has finer clothing. And the king is the one who actually winds up at the top of the mountain. The king is the one who wakes up one day and finds like this desperation of unhappiness.
Everything's done
because
for him.
remember, like we talked about, when your life is not perfect, there. You chase an external goal. Yeah. So for the Brahmins, there's this seed of desire that is...
Everything's there for you. You don't have to do anything. And unfortunately, that's the sad way it is. It's the same as when you win the lottery. People say, oh yeah, but you got all this money and you'd be super happy. If you actually go watch some documentaries, that they're not that happy. If you could buy everything, that's boring. You can't. You don't have to work towards anything. Don't have to save up for anything. Just buy it. Like just a few taps on the keyboard. Buy it on your phone. Or actually, you don't even need to do that. You just pay someone to get it for you.
Is never fulfilled. And as long as that seed of desire is never fulfilled, they can never truly seek enlightenment, because the road for enlightenment, people make it sound like it's like a positive thing. That it's like, if you look at Instagram accounts about like people who are deeply spiritual, it's all like, like being in touch with the universe and like, oh my God, I'm so like in love, like learn to love, man.
Yeah.
Like I love myself in a new way. Those guys don't get it. The road to enlightenment starts with what you feel every single day. Is that like no matter what you do, like things are decaying. And no matter like what you accomplish, like that excitement can never be reproduced.
Yeah, that's kind of what's so... it's very bittersweet in a way, because like you can appreciate it and you can also resent it or dislike it or be afraid of it. And you kind of have the duality that happens all the time.
Yeah, so that's actually, that understanding is one of the key things to transcend duality. You have to sit within duality constantly to ultimately recognize that things are neither bitter nor sweet. Right? So when you kind of talked about, you said something about like nothingness when you were talking about your understanding of Buddha's enlightenment. And I think one of the key discoveries is that, like, there is no such thing as growth and there is no such thing as decay. And once you recognize that, once you realize that, you'll be free from your sense of decay.
I feel like it's like the most enlightened version of it is what it is. I get it. Yeah. I understand it. But how is that real if people die? Like a tree dies, it burns up, tree's gone. How's that not decay?
Yeah, so I could give you a logical answer that it isn't decay. I could do that, but I think that will be a discussion of logic, and that's not actually going to like let you transcend the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer that I would give you is all kinds of things. One is like that matter, energy, and consciousness are just transformed. Yeah. Right, so like it is a chunk of limestone better or worse than like a brick in a house?
I think it's like the impact that it has on you, right? So like, of course, obviously, it's all the same in the grand scheme of things, right? In the grand order of the universe, but to a person and to like what your experiences are, there are of course things that have more importance to you than other things. It's like a family member is more important than a rock, even though
now we get to the crux of it, right? So said, the impact on you. So this is what the yogis discovered, is that, like you said, it's internal. So like the battle that you need to fight has nothing to do with climbing mountains. It has everything to do with understanding yourself, how to essentially control or be free of things impacting you. To be able to enjoy a microtransaction cesspit the same amount is your first like enjoyment of WoW. To understand that like living in life is like, it's all about impact. In the Sanskrit word for de-impaction, essentially training yourself to be free from the impact of things, is vairagya. To be free of like it's detachment is the best kind of definition of it.
Yeah.
And so like this is a process that like you can undergo to where, you know, like you can like literally learn how to transcend the mountain. That the going up the mountain and going down the mountain is not actually like any different. I know.
Yeah, even I'm like,
I don't know.
Explain.
It feels a lot different. I'll say
Explain.
Yep.
It feels a whole lot different.
Yes, it fucking does.
But that's
Explain.
the key thing, right? Is like the difference arises of feeling. It arises to your attachment or your valuing of the climb over the descent.
Yeah, but how could you possibly equate the two? That's what I don't understand. Is like it's like I try to rationalize it in my own mind a lot, where it's like you just go on. It's like for streaming, for example, right? You go on, you have a great stream, you go on, you have another stream, and it's not good. Like, how can you make both of those feel as good to you personally? And like, I think the answer that I always tell myself is that, well, you have to enjoy them both, and you have to just kind of get the same thing out of them. But it feels like that doesn't really happen for me.
Okay.
Because you're not doing it for what you want to. You're just doing it because you have to. There's a need and a want. And I feel like it's just a needing to have to do it. It was never like when you first started it, it's because you wanted to, because the excitement was there. But now it's just turned into a need because it's just the same thing all the time, and you have to do it. Well, realistically, you don't, but then I'm guessing a lot of things depend on it, and that's kind of the brick wall. It's just trying to make it fun again. I think that's what you're trying to come to. It's like, how can I make it fun? Because every time I fucking do it, I'll go down this hill, and it's just back to zero again. It's back to same thing again. I truly think that's why he did reaction, because it's still streaming, but it's because it's not the same thing. It's technically streaming is the same thing, but yet when you watch stuff from like news articles, shit on X, and he's reacting to all this stuff, it's new stuff, boom, 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 boom. It's new stuff all the time. But it's different stuff. So that's how the days, I feel, are different. If you wake up, which I think this video is 3 years old, wake up, play WoW, 14 hours, have food, go to bed, wake up, play WoW, eat food, go to bed. I think that's the system he was at. And it's a vicious fucking circle where you play WoW and you're up the fucking mountain, and then you come off stream and you start coming down because you, like, even if you feel good that you achieve something, you have to go back up that hill again, because the feeling of satisfaction isn't there, because it's the same thing. So when you start doing reaction to different things like Trump, or the court case with Johnny Depp, again, different stuff. So I guess it's kind of taking out of the scenario like how your life is, and discussing and reacting to stuff that's happening all across the world, and not just in his room. So he's gone from his room to the world, talking about stuff. And every day there's always something new happening on or being said on the news, which realistically it's something different to talk about.
I'll give you one last logical answer, and then we're going to get into it. Okay?
Yeah. All right.
So here's the thing. So I think you learn this in medicine. So like sometimes you work with a patient and they live. And sometimes you work with a patient and they die.
Yeah.
Right? So like clearly one is better than the other. There's like no objective argument that can be made. And yet, do you imagine that it's possible for a doctor to go to work every day and actually like be just as satisfied with their life whether the patient lives or dies?
I don't think so. I think that there are a lot of doctors that probably, if they have a patient die, they'll feel terrible about it. I would expect so, yeah.
Yeah, so here's where what my experience has been, is that ultimately I can't control whether a patient lives or dies. And it's been really bizarre. I'm thinking of one particular patient in residency that had like younger guy, maybe in his like early to mid 50s, had liver cancer, but like one of the sort of genetic or other variants. Like it's not like he was drinking alcohol and did something that was responsible for the cancer. Just so he was a Chinese gentleman, and so I was kind of assigned to him because I speak a little bit of Mandarin, and like we didn't have Mandarin translators, and so like I was assigned to him because like I could at least ask him like if he had pain that day. And so working with his family was really interesting. He had like a 17-year-old son, and it was really like eye-opening because like it's clear that the dude is gonna die, and yet like it's so hard to describe. I think this is where you have to really experience it, but sort of like coming to terms with the fact that as a human being, like I can't cure him of his cancer. Like I can't do that as a doctor. You can't actually save someone's life. All you can do is like try.
Make him comfortable.
Right?
Yeah.
And there comes a point where like a patient can survive and you can have done a shitty job as a doctor, and a patient can have died and you could have done an amazing job as a doctor. And that ultimately, like, where my peace comes from is devoting myself to like the action that I take, as opposed to like what happens to the patient. Because there's no question that life is better than death, at least in a medical setting, right? But it's sort of like where I find my peace. And I know this may sound strange to you, Zach, and we'll get you there. Because I think I have the benefit of some of these experiences where you like grapple with like people dying of cancer and you figure out, how can I go on? How can I, can I be proud of what I did? And there are times where like when I think about that patient and my work with that patient, that is, I think, like the height of what I've been capable of.
Yeah, being attached to an outcome.
And being detached from the outcome.
Being attached is the problem and being detached is the goal.
Yeah. And so like can you see how objectively, like, there's no question that life is better than death, but even like to this day, the family is incredibly grateful that I was this person's doctor. I'm incredibly grateful for having the experience, even though the dude died and it was sad, that there's an axis of suffering and contentment that is actually independent of happiness and sadness.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
Right? And I think you may understand that part pretty well, because I think that there are a lot of reasons that there's a lot of joy, enjoyment, and potential happiness in your day-to-day. There's accomplishment, there's hopefully laughter, there's working with your one true king folks. And there's something that's like missing on the inside, despite everything going so well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what everyone hides.
So that axis is like the path that you have to walk through spirituality, because you figured out how to like become successful.
Yep.
That's the first axis. And what happens, the reason we get stuck is because we think that the axis of success and the axis of contentment are linked. Because early on in life, as we climb that mountain, we think that these two things are linked because they grow together. And then you kind of like, you're going up together. And then what happens is you get to the top of the mountain. And then some people realize that the axes are truly perpendicular. And when you understand that 100% is when you attain enlightenment.
Yeah, I've tried so hard.
It's basically just coming real with yourself. Like I said in part one, it's taking that step back. Stepping out of that box, realizing the world, like you're like, it's like when you're inside that box, your world's moving so fucking fast, like it's going faster than the actual real world, in the real picture that people don't see. It's like, stop fighting with yourself and realize what the bigger picture.
Hard, and like I in a way, like, it's something that you can clearly know, but knowing it isn't the same as living it.
With you 100%.
Yeah. It's like you want to do that, and you want to transcend being outcome outcome driven or outcome determined or whatever, right? But you just can't get out of it. Like it's like I'll play a game and I'll be like, oh, even if I don't beat the boss, even if I don't do something, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then I play it and I don't beat the boss, and I'm malding.
Yep. Yeah. So enough of theory.
Yeah.
Because I think there's something holding you back.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is where I think that, like, there's that general principle, but I think there's one big thing getting in the way, which is your fear of death. So this, I think is actually like psychological in nature. It's of the mind.
Okay.
And so as long as we have to get to and probably process or dissolve this sense of decay that like plagues you. Right? So that, like, what I'm sort of getting the sense of is like you have this shadow.
It's what I would call my black hole. Because it's never fucking ending. It's the absolute fucking pinnacle of never being able to get out of, because you can't see anything, you can't fucking hear anything, and you don't know where it fucking goes. And it's the same thing. It's a fucking whirlwind of a loophole of the same thing every fucking day.
No, that goes like that accompanies you through all of your things. And the shadow is like this feeling that like we're on the decline, that there's a sense of decay.
It's the same thing why people don't say that there is no light at the end of the tunnel when it's not in daytime. You know what I mean? In a tunnel, there's either going back to how it used to be or moving forward to a different experience, because it's not the same entrance that you walk through.
That joy, like the only firsts that I have left are bad ones.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
And so that comes from somewhere. That has nothing to do with the axis of contentment or suffering. What that has to do with is like a psychological, like, because, and this is where we can lean on neuroscience a little bit. Just think about this for a second, Zach. Like, you literally have neurons that have been wired to produce those thoughts.
Yep. That's crazy. That's the crazy
right. So then the question becomes, how did those neurons get wired that way, and how can we change your neuronal wiring? So this is now taking a step. We're going to leave spirituality behind. Forget about spirituality. Forget about enlightenment. Forget about the top of the mountain. And what we really have to do for you is do some psychological work and rewire some of your neurons, because once that happens, then you can walk that other axis of contentment and suffering. So let me ask you this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. It's basically, it's programmed in the wrong.
It's trying to fucking understand that actually some things in life aren't always bad. But it's that like next step you take. It's the most scariest step you take, but it is that next step, because if you don't take that step, that wall would never ever come down, and you'll always live behind that wall of, why am I like this?
Wrong way. Like you're programmed to think one thing, and it's a bad thing to think. Yeah, I totally understand.
Sort of. So the tricky thing is that it's programmed. It was programmed in the right way, and now it's maladaptive.
Yeah.
So it's not a mistake. It's actually. And so let me ask you this: how long have you been afraid of death?
Since I found out about it.
Can you tell me about that? How you found out about death?
I don't really remember, honestly. I think the earliest memory I have is I was like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 or 6, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I was raised Roman Catholic, and so I had a lot of experience just kind of talking about the whole idea of afterlife and everything like that. And even whenever I was like 5 years old, I read some of the stories. I heard some of the stories in the Bible. I was like, man, I never heard of anybody that lived in a fish. I don't even know if this is true. And it made me wonder, it's like, what is the what's really going on and what's really going to happen. Because like, yeah, I understand people die, and I was scared of it. I remember, it's like you can run from it, hide from it. Destiny comes all the same, and it's scary. It is, and I remember thinking that when I was a little kid. And there have been times where I've been able to kind of forget about that, and I think that's really kind of always been.
It's the same reason why everyone thinks of it, but at the end of the day, there's no permanent way of getting rid of it. It's just things that you do interrupt it, and I think it's playing games, playing computer games, playing video games. For me, it's a bit different, but Resident Evil, playing like I said in part 1 of this, playing Resident Evil 2 at 5-6 years old made a massive difference, because it was psychologically taking my mind off what I had to do, the things when I played the games, it was that shift of, like, it's still there now. Those thoughts are basically what they're saying, but you just put stuff in the way of it. You do things, you go mountain biking, you play video games, people build a fucking car, people build a fucking computer, people build a house, people go to work. It's that initial, like, divertment from the inedible. And sometimes there's coping mechanisms on what people do. But you got to remember, not everyone thinks like this, because it's how much you indulge. I believe in especially younger lives, the younger self of you, where you grow up thinking the same thing. You know what I mean? Like he's saying, it doesn't matter how fast you run, doesn't matter where you hide, it's still gonna happen. It's really fucking true. But I think it's like, maybe you need to kind of stop thinking 40, 50, 60, 70 years ahead of yourself. You know what I mean? It's like buying a car and thinking, and every time you start that car, you think, fuck, is it gonna blow up? You're on the highway, you're on the motorway. Oh shit, is it gonna blow up? And 4 years down the line, you think, wait, it still works. Why was I thinking that back then? And it's kind of the same way how you would think of it as life. Like, why are you thinking tomorrow I might die? Yes, the possibility, you could. But generally, it's not something you would think. It's just something you go do. You mean tomorrow comes, you do what you do. So I think, again, it's that taking that step. It's realizing that you don't have to live in that mindset where, oh, when's my time?
Then my goal is to just not think about it. And I think that sometimes whenever I don't, this sounds like really stupid, because I think it, in a way, I feel stupid for thinking this way. And like I will do badly in a game sometimes, and it will remind me that I'm getting older and I'm gonna die because I'm not as good as I feel like I used to be. And it's like this weird, like, kind of domino effect where, like, playing a game like that will make me feel this way. And it's just so, like, to me, I find it embarrassing. It's weird, because I think it's like a illogical conclusion in a way, but in another way it's not.
Yeah. So well said. So I think when you say it's an illogical conclusion, here's what I'm going to rephrase that a little bit, or transform it. Okay. The way I'm going to interpret that is that if you look at the variables that lead you to playing a crappy game of whatever, there are tons of them, right?
Yeah.
If you're a MOBA player, the number one variable is that your team sucks.
Absolutely. It's always their fault.
Yep. And so, like, if we think about it, there are 1,000 reasons why, you have poor performance in the game.
Yeah.
But what your mind jumps to is, see, this is a sign of the decay. We knew it was there. We know it's coming. As you said, you can't escape it. It's destiny. Here it is.
Yep.
And so this is the very nature of a cognitive bias, is that, like, it's a filter through which an independent experience transforms into something else.
Yeah, it's like if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You find it, yeah, I get it.
So now
you got to remember, as hard as the problem may be, or a nail might be the biggest problem in your life, but that nail can easily be hammered and solved.
we go back to, I mean, you say you don't have many memories about it, but like I think that we have to figure out how to deconstruct the filter, and that starts with like understanding how the filter was built. And so when you were 4 years old and you were like raised Roman Catholic, and when you say, can you tell us more about that?
Well, I went to church every Sunday, got communion. I never liked going to church, couldn't play Game Boy in church, and I didn't really ever believe in a lot of this stuff. I thought it was kind of, in a way, there's like the parallel realities of, is it more, like, I think I even said this last time I was on here, is it more terrifying to know that you are created just for this endless cycle of servitude towards some deity that you don't really fully comprehend? Or is it more terrifying that you're just a hyper-intelligent ape with no purpose in life who's going to die and can cease to exist in a period of time that's nothing in the grand scheme of things? It's like, which one of these realities is more terrifying? And I think they're both pretty bad.
Yep.
Yeah, so that sounds like philosophy to me.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the religion in a lot of ways is philosophy, and so.
Yep. So I'm going to steer away from that.
Go ahead.
So, why did you have to go to church?
Well, my mom wanted me to. It was Sunday.
Fucking yeah.
And can you help me understand what did you ever try to tell your mom that you didn't want to go to church?
Yes, I made her aware of the way that I felt about it. Yes.
And your fucking mama made sure you was there on fucking time, boy.
Many times.
Can you tell us about that?
No.
I was like, Mom, I don't want to go. She's like, it's too bad. You're going to go.
Fucking alright, boy.
Like, well, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And then finally, sometimes I would try to make myself feel better and think like maybe she'll take me to Burger King after church. That honestly, sometimes that helped. But overall, like she would always make me want to go or make me go. And I didn't really like nowadays. The weird thing about it is nowadays I offer every time that it's like a holiday, like right now, COVID. So like I'm not doing it, but like any other time besides, and I always tell her like, listen, Mom, if you want me to take you to church, I will not even stream. Like I will make sure that you get to go to church. Right. Because I knew how much it meant to her back then. But whenever I was a kid, I didn't have that same perspective. Right. And so back then I just, I didn't want to go. I hated going. And it was just, it's like I could be at home playing with my friends. I could be playing video games. I could be doing something that I want to do. And instead, I'm doing this thing that I don't want to do, that I don't even think is real.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. And what would she say when you told her that you didn't want to go?
I think there's a lot of different things she'd say. But
it's what she did.
Like, I don't. The thing is, it's odd because I don't even really remember.
Mm-hmm.
Like the only thing I really remember is that it didn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah, I could rationalize it all I wanted, but I was still driving to church.
Yep. So inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Nothing you can do to escape it.
Well, I could like fake sick. Sometimes I fake sick. There's a few times I did that. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty much inevitable.
Now, are we talking about going to church or dying?
Church.
Definitely church. I feel like I definitely feel like it's two kind of different things.
You're asking him. Yeah, you're asking him, like, why? And he's saying, oh, it's because, like, sometimes I faked up being sick. He just didn't want to fucking go. And now you're saying, like, inedible. Yeah, because his fucking mum made him. And it's the same with school. Some people don't want to go to fucking school, so they fake it. Or, oh, my belly, or I got, like, fucking diarrhea or whatever. Alright, fine. Okay, Jimmy, go to bed then. And you're like, yeah, boy, I'm a fucking Game Boy. Like, that's it. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, you probably get checked on a few times a day. Oh, yeah, I've still got a temperature, blah, blah, blah. Fucking Game Boy straight back out. Fucking Pokemon Blue. You know what I mean? And if you didn't do that, you're lying. But now as an adult, he respected that his mum wanted to go. And how much it meant to her.
Because church, like, I knew that at some point I wouldn't have to always do this. And like, I could get away from it to an extent. Because it's like, okay, well, I'm clearly not going to be 9 years old forever. So eventually I won't have to deal with this.
Yep.
But with dying, you can't really get away from it in the same way.
So let me ask you a question, okay? So I understand that you don't remember exactly what the conversations were, but you remember the feeling, right? Of being dragged to church.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
nice,
there's a certain sense of like powerlessness and inevitability to the story that you're telling.
No, I mean, I think every kid has like many stories like that where you just have to do something. It's like going to school. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. If it's the same thing for you, but let's not worry about what many kids have.
Okay.
So here's my question. I know it's going to sound kind of weird.
Yeah.
When you have those thoughts of decay, is the quality, flavor, or color of emotion that you experience at all similar to how you felt when you got dragged to church?
No.
Not really. I mean, I think the church thing was just a more or less, a 1.5 hour inconvenience.
Yep.
Whereas dying is like a very much. It's much.
Of course. It's just same as the school. Oh, we'll go to school today. Like, who gives a fuck about fucking school? But actually, realistically, it's very important. And luckily, my kids aren't like that, like how I was. But we won't go into that. But yeah, that's not really like. Come on, like.
Longer inconvenience.
And so, can you tell me a little bit about when you started to fear death?
Yeah, like I was a kid. I mean, as I said, as soon as I figured out that it was going to happen.
All he's trying to do is get a different answer from him. That's all he's trying to do is get a different answer from Asmongold. He's so if there is a broken down car on a road and you can go around it, you'll go around it. If there's a broken down car and you can't get around it, you're fucked. So what he's trying to do, which I believe, is trying to get around what Zach is saying. Yeah, he didn't want to go to fucking church because it's boring. Same as school, and you'll make shit up to get around it. But realistically, he's trying to get Zach to say something very in particular.
Like, and how did you figure out that it was going to happen?
Well, that's the thing is like I must have been like 4 or 5 years old, so I can't really remember. It's hard for me to really get it, to really remember what it was or how it felt, because it was just so long ago.
And so I'm hearing you've carried this feeling with you for a long time.
Yeah.
Do you remember like times that maybe you were a little bit older that you were like worried about it? Like, do you have any memories of being slightly older where...
I think where he's going with this is, yeah, it was really, really shit. I felt really down. I didn't like it. I hated going. I hated thinking about it. But if you put that same perspective into life and about death, but look at the outcome. You know what I mean? It's like... It's not always the ending. Sometimes it's the path getting to it.
Yeah, I remember, well, it's like not just for me, right? I worry obviously about my parents dying. That's scary. And there was one time my mom, she, I don't know, we don't know really what it was. Took her to the doctor a while afterwards, but she like kind of had some sort of like wasn't really like a heart attack, but it was some sort of like a thing. It was like a couple of steps below that. And I remember like I woke up and I thought that, and I was like, oh my God, that was a pretty bad point in my life, because she didn't want me to call the ambulance, right? Because we were really poor, we couldn't afford it. And like having to deal with that and like the helplessness, not only of, you know, of the greater existential situation, but also just like the day to day, like, you know, we don't have money, we can't take care of ourselves. And that was brutal.
What was brutal about it?
Well, I mean, like having to, like feeling like you're going to lose one of your parents, and then thinking to yourself, like, this is all I've ever known, and like to know that it's not going to last. And like that's what was scary. And to be helpless even inside of the context of society, right? Because you don't have the money to take care of it. And the funny thing about that is that I actually like, yeah, I remember, because I woke up and she was like she was like screaming or like crying, and so like I had to wake up. Like I used to have like PTSD, and I guess it's PTSD, I don't know, I just kind of read about it later on. I would wake up and I would hear it in my head, and I would have to get up and check on her.
Yeah.
And this had happened like once every like 2 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
And this went on for maybe like 6 months, a year, something like that. And then you know, I kind of got I that stopped happening. I wouldn't say I got over it, but it stopped happening. And then funny thing about that is that's actually what drove me to make my YouTube channel and to start making videos. That's kind of the reason.
Can you help me understand that? How does that relate to a YouTube channel?
Well, because I didn't have the I couldn't really have a job at that point, because I felt like I had to be around to take care of her. And I wanted to be able to work from home and do something like that. And so I didn't want to spend all day at work in case she had something happen that she needed me there for. And that's why I started doing YouTube videos, because I thought that, well, maybe I can do this and, you know, see where it goes. That's the reason.
That's interesting.
Fucking real talk.
Yeah.
Real fucking talk.
So are you saying that if your mom had never had something like a heart attack, you wouldn't have had a career in streaming?
You know, I've always felt that, yeah, I mean, that's why I say I never have any regrets in my life, in a way. And it's like you know, you need a hot fire to forge a sword.
Yeah.
And
fucking
that's kind of the way that I looked at it. Yeah, it's true. But it sucks.
Yeah. So, Zach, this may sound kind of weird, but like,
yeah,
I'm kind of hearing that you're not really afraid of. I know it sounds weird.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're not really afraid of death. I think what bothers you, it sounds to me, is actually your inability to deal with death.
Yep.
Well, control over it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be nice if I could control it. That'd be great.
I know it sounds weird, and
yeah,
this may seem like a useless distinction, but to me it actually feels pretty significant, because what I'm hearing themes of is not actually death. It's like you being like, and I'm stretching here, okay? So I'm trying to draw connections, but and so, you know, we feel free to bat them down if they don't sit with you. It's hypothesis testing. You know, what I'm really hearing is that, like, you've been on the receiving end of being powerless before. And, like, what I'm hearing is that death is, like, the guaranteed powerlessness. It's the one thing that you know that no matter how hard you try, you can fix everything else.
Yep.
You can have money, you can have medical care, you can have friends, you can have love, and you can gain power over every dimension in your life. But the one thing that you can never gain power over is death.
Yeah, but that's the same with everyone. Yeah. It don't matter if you got 10 million, 50 million, whatever. Like it like people say, you don't choose it, it chooses you. You have no fucking control. You can eat healthier, you could be more active, you could be more lazy, you could eat the wrong things. Like, it's not how you're brought into the world. It's not how you die. It's that middle ground, how you treat your life. How you enjoy it. You know what I mean? It's no point pondering about, oh, do I want to be buried? Do I want to be cremated? Like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, at least first enjoy your fucking life. Find the things you enjoy. Do the things you want. life is too short. Like, some people look at themselves and they're 40 years old and they think, geez, where's the last 10 years gone? Where's the last 20 years gone? That's my point I'm making. Life is too short to start worrying about stuff later on in life now. Like, worry about life now. Like, enjoy your life now.
True.
The interesting thing, though, is that I'm not, because it's bizarre, because most people who fear death are concerned about regret. They're concerned about lost opportunities. They're concerned about all the things that they didn't get to do.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing really much of that at all from you.
If I could sit in my room and play video games, eating Cheetos and drinking soda for another 1,000 years, I would do it.
Yeah, I would.
So it's interesting because I know it sounds weird, but for a lot of people, the fear of death is about missed things. I'm not hearing that from you. What I'm really hearing from you is that death is about the inevitability of powerlessness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that decay is like, entropy is like a force that no matter how hard you fight against, you can never overcome.
You can't do anything about it. Yeah, it's the Ozymandias analogy again. Yeah.
Yep. It's
exactly.
So this is where, like, I think if you want to be free of that, the work that we need to do is about experiences of powerlessness in your life. Right?
And
because that's, yeah.
I've thought about doing that for myself too. It's like, I remember there's like sometimes whenever I will take risks in a way, and this sounds really bad, I'll take risks in a way that could really hurt me, and I don't care about them. Because it's like kind of an exercise in letting go of worrying about your well-being.
No, it's not. It's an exercise in exerting power.
How do you feel? How do you feel like that?
Because like you're taking the risk, right? So like you're manning up against it. Like like what? So this is exactly what I'm saying.
But some people say if you don't face it, it'll always control you. If you don't stand face to face with reality, with the things you fucking suffer with, they will control you for the rest of as long as you fucking live. It's not being about standing down to it, because that's extremely dangerous. It's also extremely dangerous to be face to face with your darkest fear, because your life has gone on as the same time you think about this fear. You know what I mean? 10 years can pass and you're still thinking of this fucking fear. You know what I mean? If you have a shadow that's been following you your entire life, if you don't turn that light on to see what's following you, then you can't get a grasp on it. You can't deal with it. You need to face.
For most people, risk to their well-being is enough of a deterrent. But for you have a far more important flame within you, which is like irrespective of the impact to my well-being. Like, I'm going to choose. I'm going to be in control. I'm going to jump into the lake of fire because I'm the one that's doing it. And while 1,000 people will say to you, you're a dumbass for jumping into a lake of fire, they don't understand that, like, what you need from that, what you're getting out of that, is that you're the one who's doing the jumping.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, like, what I try to get out of it is that I can let go and just let it happen if it goes wrong.
We're saying the same thing.
Yeah,
right? Because what you're trying to do is train yourself to be powerless.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Which, in a weird way, is actually taking control.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. I mean, but it's like, how can you, it's like a paradox, right? Because how do you take control of not having control?
Exactly.
How do you not take control of not having
fucking face it?
That's why it doesn't work.
Face it.
Okay.
Because you've tried it, right?
Yeah.
And you still fear death. And you still fear powerlessness. And you've do you see, I think we're saying the same thing. Like, I think now I feel like we're onto something, because it's like, you do this thing to train yourself, to inure yourself, to build some damage, like you want some fear of death resistance. So what you're going to do is jump into a lake of fire, and 1,000 other people are going to say, like, don't do that, that's dumb. And you're like, you guys don't understand. For me, it's like I have to learn how to, like, let go or whatever. Like, I have to learn how to face these things and, like, do something that's high risk, because it's like you trying to grapple with this thing.
Yeah. Well, it's also just like small things. I remember I was walking up the street. This was like years ago, right? Or quite a while. I don't know if it's years ago. It was quite a while ago. And I had like a weird, I don't know if this was like a panic attack or something like that, where I was walking down to the street or to the store. I was walking down the street to the store, and I had like a weird thing happen with like my chest. And I don't know if it was a panic attack, if it was some sort of like, weird thing with my heart. I don't know what it was. This happened a few years ago, and it was the first time that I ever really felt, I think that almost many people have this experience, right, where they have the first feeling of mortality, and that was that for me, right? And I remember a year or so later, I had not that same feeling, but something that reminded me of it, like walking up the street, and I thought to myself, if that's the case, and if I die right now, there couldn't be a better time for it to go. I'm walking down the street, I'm happy, I'm with my friends, I'm in my neighborhood, and everything is as good as it's ever going to be. And that's been the closest that I've been to being able to deal with it.
Yeah. Listen, what are you saying to me, Zach?
I don't know.
Like think.
Oh, he was on it. Oh, damn. You should just let him talk. Fuck me. That's some deep shit there. And then as soon as he said, what are you saying? And he's like, I don't know. He's backing up. He's letting too much out. I think he's worried that he's going to die a lonely man. I think he's worried that he's going to die a lonely man who lives on his own. And people will just forget him.
Think about that for a second. Like,
yeah.
What are you... So you're afraid of death, right?
Yeah.
And that second time when you were walking, don't read Twitch chat.
Okay. All right.
So when you're walking up the street, mm-hmm. and you start to feel that sensation, did you think you were dying?
It was a 2% chance, 1% chance. Yeah. It made me aware. It made me aware of it.
Sure. And so so can we just sort of, I'm going to interpret, okay? So you're welcome to push back against the interpretation. So in that moment, you were actually like, that's the closest to death that you've actually ever been.
Closest to death that I've been without, I mean, like there have been some other times where I've been pretty close to it.
Aware of your proximity to death. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
The unknown. I remember there was
the unknown. Like, you knew something was wrong. You have no fucking control of it. That's exactly what Doc's on about. What Zach is on about, on the other hand, I will not go into. No. It's kind of why I like watching stuff like this and seeing how his persona is now fucking way changed anyway. But yeah, Doc is trying to keep him on a straight path. Zach, on the other hand, is saying, yo, like, no, this is not the first time. There's been many times. But what Doc is saying is like, yeah, but where you haven't been in control of what your actions could lead to.
One time, my friend was driving down the street. He was drunk and high, and I was in the passenger seat, and the seatbelt didn't work. And I thought to myself, man, I'm never going to have to worry about that test that I have to do next week.
How did you feel when you were close to death?
In the first case, the one in the car, I felt it's like there's like it's terrifying, but at the same time, it's also grounding.
And when you're walking up the street and you think to yourself, maybe there's a 2% chance this is a heart attack, how do you feel?
I felt good. Felt fine.
So, like, this makes no sense. Because here you are afraid of death on a daily basis. And when it comes knocking on your door, the words that you describe are not abject terror. Sure, there's terror, but there's also grounding.
Yep.
And there's also a sense of like peace and acceptance.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a weird. It's like kind of you have moments of peace and moments of being able to deal with things, and then also moments where you can't.
No.
It's like it's not an even keel.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay.
Because I think actually, I know it sounds weird. What you say is logically makes a ton of sense. But here's what I'd like to put out to you is that when actually faced with death, you're okay with it. It's the feeling of decay, the feeling of inevitability, the feeling of powerlessness about that future thing that you can never prevent. That's where you're terrified.
Yeah, I think it's
Do you see the difference? Like, because when you actually face death, you're like, so be it.
And anticipation is the stressful thing, and going back to the thing with the dentist, right? I mean, sitting in the waiting room is way more stressful than actually having the teeth,
agreed.
Fixed or whatever.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same with like doing your driving test, waiting in that waiting room, going over and over and over and over and over and over again the questions and shit. Am I going to do this? I need to do this. Make sure that road sign. Make sure I don't overspeed. Make sure I'm in the right gear and this and that. And then you fucking do the driving test. And you pass, you're like, what the fuck am I worrying about?
So now
it's the unknown is always the dangerous side of knowing what could happen.
We get to like, I think the problem is that you've misdiagnosed yourself, and not that we diagnose you here on stream. I'm not going to diagnose, or just use that term loosely, okay? Yeah. Because you call it the fear of death. But I don't think it's the fear of death. I think it's the fear of powerlessness. Because when you actually face death, you're kind of like, if I go, so be it. Yep. That's vairagya.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary in a way. Yeah, I think the more I have to think about it, it's like kind of it's like
it's different from where you go over the same fucking thing in your mind. That's it. You've already set in concrete. That's how you are. That's the way life is. Nothing's going to change it. Nothing can intervene. Fuck it. I have to deal with it. But when someone actually talks to you and says to you, "Oh, hang on a minute. But why do you think that way? When this way you're actually okay about this?" But technically it's not the right way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how much food coloring do you have to put into a cake to make it the color of what you want it? You know what I mean? It starts off one color, but you want it to be a different color. How much of the food coloring are you going to put in for it to be exactly how you want it? But it doesn't mean it's right.
Try not to think about it. Let me just say that.
Yeah, so we'll get to your whole coping structure in a second. But like, and I think this is where, I sort of barked up the tree of like Roman Catholicism, fear of death and things like that. And that tree there's nothing in the tree, right? I asked you that stuff and it kind of felt like it wasn't, you were kind of like, yeah, that's not the same feeling. You basically told me. So, and I think that makes sense because I think what the feeling really is, it really has to do with like, we've got to talk about times in your life where you felt powerless. Like this whole thing with your mom, I think is like a far better, like, I know it sounds kind of weird, but like, when you think about your decay, when you do poorly in a video game, okay?
Yeah.
This is going to sound like a bizarre question, and feel free to swat this down too if it doesn't feel right, okay? When you do poorly in a video game, is the color, flavor, and texture of how you feel in that moment, forget about your thoughts, forget about your rationalizations, similar to how you felt when your mom told you, don't call the ambulance?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, yeah. Sure. And I think that's basically it. It's like feeling like you don't have the control over it, and like you just can't, what needs to happen.
You're a human being with, like he said, that you know the right way and what should be done, but your hands are tied behind your back because you're told something else. But yet you fucking know that it should be done this way. It's like when my dad had a heart attack. He was cutting the grass. He was my brother as well. He had a heart attack, and he was telling us, don't do that, don't do that, it's fine. And we're like, wait, what, like, but it's for your best interest. And he said, no, because and then do you go, no, fuck that shit, I know what's best, I ring an ambulance, or do you respect what he says? You know what I mean? It's like,
and then you can't do it.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, Zach,
yeah,
is that I think if you want to be happy, okay, there's a two-step process, and we can dig into this a little bit more if you want to today. But like, here's what I'm seeing: the first thing that you've got to do, because you said this beautifully. You said, "I didn't get over it, but it stopped happening."
Yeah.
With your
yeah.
I think that's a lot of PTSD and things like that, right? I mean, you have like the initial shock. It's the same with like a wound, right? I mean, the wound eventually heals, but you still remember it being there in a way.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to say is that it just changed the shape in which it manifests. And that it's the same thing. This is the hypothesis. The fear of decay that you have is what it turned into. When did your mom have this event?
2012.
Okay.
I think it was somewhere around that. Might have been 2013. I think it was November 2012, if I remember right.
And how long did you have the PTSD, waking up, things like that?
Until about I don't know, like 2014, middle of 2014, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I mean, like, obviously these are very rough like guesses, but yeah.
And how long have you felt not excited? How long have you been worried about the decay of your career and that you're getting old?
Probably the last 2 years, 2 or 3 years. No, probably three-ish years.
So it looks like there's like, so let's say like there's a pretty significant gap between 2014 and 2018. And I think that there's like, to me though, I feel like I've got a pretty good sense that if you want to be free of this thing, you've actually got to go back and explore like times in your life where you felt powerless. Like the sense of inevitability and like powerlessness. Yeah. And we can kind of talk about that more. I mean, I know we've been at it for, a while now. And so I'll kind of leave it up to you whether you want to talk a little bit about like coping, like your tendency to like cope and.
Well, what do you mean by exploring it? Like I'm curious, like how do you explore a moment of powerlessness?
Great question. So like I think I know it sounds weird, but when I ask you about your mom, what did you feel in that moment as you were retelling the story?
Well, it sucked. I mean, like the thing is, if I've told the story before on my stream, so like kind of the visceral, like emotional feeling is not really there as much because I'm used to telling it. But it's.
But you're talking to someone who understands. You're talking to someone who is a blank wall. So it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter how you say it or how your persona comes across as you say it. It is what it is. You know what I mean?
It sucks. I mean, I think it feels bad. I think that's
in what way does it feel bad?
I don't know. I mean, like it feels bad that it happened. It feels bad that
hopelessness.
I guess it just feels bad that it happened. I'm not really sure exactly how to describe it.
So let me ask you this: do you experience an echo of what you experienced back then when you tell the story?
No.
No, that's why I can tell it.
Okay. So that's what we have to change. So here's how it works. Okay. So from like, and this is a slightly more yogic perspective, but if we look at principles of psychotherapy, I think we're kind of, so I'll kind of explain to you what happens. So when we have negative experiences, there's a certain emotional energy that we experience in that moment. And that energy can do one of two things. It can either be digested or buried. Generally speaking, as we get older, we get better at digesting negative experiences. So if we think about like, you know, so for example, you know, being emotionally abused by your boss at the age of 27 for 6 months is far less damaging than being emotionally abused by a teacher for 6 months at the age of 5.
Yes.
Right? So like if we think about why is that, it's because our brain's capacity to process and digest at older ages is improved.
Yeah, you have more context around it.
Yeah, your understanding, your ability to know.
Yeah, so what you say is context is your brain's ability to attach context around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So the 5-year-old doesn't understand how to do that. You're precisely right, but I'm just sort of reshaping it as like a faculty of the mind. So if we look at like psychotherapy and like psychiatry, like why do we dig into the past? It's because like most of the dormant emotional energy forms in the past because we tend to do pretty good. Like you could have a traumatic breakup, you can lose a parent, things like that. But like losing a parent at the age of 7 has, and I've seen this, lifelong impacts.
Yeah.
Losing a parent at the age of 42 has also affects you for the rest of your life, but it doesn't like...
But you're an adult that may understand it because you're a grown man. A child doesn't know what it's going to have for teeth tonight. So to have a physical, human, talking, loving person completely vanish. So okay, here's an instant. So my neighbor was a very, very nice guy. He was a medic for a very special army regiment, should I say. He was a very, very nice guy. My kids enjoyed chatting with him, knew him for many years, and then he sadly passed away. And when it came to explaining to my son he's no longer here, because I needed to make that environment safe, I need to make that environment loving for him to understand, like, we're still here for him, but that cool guy, that, like, the neighbor is sadly gone, he's passed on, was very soul destroying for him, because it's all the mixed messages, it's all the wiring in his brain that is like, fuck, like, I guess I'm never seeing him again. As an adult, we kind of know this. Unfortunately, we know this as adults because it's just the way the life cycle works. You know what I mean?
Damage you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it doesn't change the course. Yeah, I see.
So here's what happens. I know it sounds kind of weird, but that energy lies dormant and then resurfaces. So the example that I'm going to use is like the standard one I use on stream. Is let's say I'm walking down the street with my kid, and my kid sees a dog. Kid goes to pet the dog. Dog kind of nips at my kid. The kid gets terrified, starts crying, yells, terrified, pick me up, daddy, feels a ton of fear and emotion. 10 minutes later, I get her an ice cream. She's licking the ice cream. We don't have to go to the emergency room or anything. The dog was actually just sniffing her, didn't even bite her.
It's the psychological damaging of that child never liking a dog again. And funny enough, my brother has the same experience. He absolutely fucking hates dogs. You could have the most nicest dog in the world. You can have a fucking dog with 3 legs. He will fucking run a mile.
but for
Yeah.
her it was traumatic. And 10 minutes later, she's like a kid. She's resilient, so she's like licking her ice cream, telling me about what she's doing in school. Everything's fine until the next day when she sees another dog, and she freaks out. Daddy, pick me up! Oh my god! So like, where did that? She's like across the street. It's like, what's happening? So what's happened is her neurons have wired to recognize this dog as a dangerous stimulus.
Yeah, people like the human brain is good at recognizing patterns and making patterns.
Oh my god. So what Doc is saying, he's doing it to himself. I just realized he's allowed himself to be mentally unstable, to allow this black cloud to permanently live over him, and to allow this black cloud at any time it fucking wants to do whatever it wants and how it wants to his mental capabilities of such thing. That is fucking crazy.
Absolutely, right? So that dormant emotional energy, so that's the neuroscientific perspective. Let's think about it from like an emotional energy perspective. A ton of emotion disappears in 10 minutes. It doesn't actually disappear, right? It goes dormant.
Yeah.
And then reactivates. So what I'm hearing from you is that like this emotional energy reactivates as signs of decay. Oh, you see the decay there. You see the decay there. It's inevitable. I'm powerless. Yeah. There's nothing I can do. And so then the question becomes like, okay, if that emotional energy is like manifesting, because this is where we kind of get to coping. You say it beautifully, Zach. You're kind of like, I didn't really get over it, but it sort of went away. And what it's doing is it's like seeping in through the cracks now. It shapes the way that your mind looks at things. It shapes the way that you look at
in the same respects of when I say the black cloud
life, because there's this like part of your brain that is telling you, Zach, that no matter what you do, you are powerless.
Yeah.
And so what is your brain, then what happens is your brain takes that feeling and it actually tries to construct a logic around it.
Yep.
So this sounds kind of weird, but this is how like kind of psychosis works, where like paranoia, where the person has the paranoia. It's actually an emotion that's at the root of it. And then their mind constructs an explanation to corroborate the emotion. Why do people feel like they're being followed by the FBI as opposed to someone else? It's because they have a feeling of being followed, feeling observed, and then the mind constructs and asks itself in a logical way, what organizations have the resources to constantly follow me? Which is why you see these recurrent themes of like FBI, mob, whatever.
Yeah, I can see that. So they're just looking for a outlet to rationalize their feelings.
Absolutely. But at the root of it is a feeling. And in your case, I think what your mind has done is like latched onto this fear of death, because I don't think it's actually a fear of death. I know it sounds weird. I know you're afraid of death, but I think what you're really afraid of is powerlessness at the time of death. Because if we really look at it scientifically, when you face death, you're not like freaking the fuck out. You're actually like, if I have to go now, so be it, which is not what you would expect from someone who's facing death.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
And so I know it sounds kind of weird, but so now when we get to when you say like exploring it, what does that mean? What this means is that actually all of that dormant emotion, as we talk about it and as we bring the emotion up, you will feel it in the moment. And you will feel powerless in the moment. But the cool thing is that each time you feel powerless, let's say like in a therapy session, it actually reduces the dormant emotional energy. And as the dormant emotional energy starts to wane, your fear of decay will go with it.
So I actually have an interesting way that I agree with you. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I talked about it on my stream too, is because the exact same thing happened with a lot of other problems that I had whenever I was younger. So if you ever go back and watch one of my highlight videos of 2016 or something like that, I was very afraid to even show my arms because I'm extremely skinny. I'm very, very, very skinny. And I was even more so then. And on top of that, I would always cover my mouth whenever I would smile because I didn't want people to see that I had things wrong with my teeth. I would wear a beanie sometimes if I felt a little bit more bald than usual that day. And I had a lot of insecurities, and having to eventually deal with those insecurities on camera. And I remember recently I took a shower on stream where I took my shirt off on stream. And imagine doing that 4 years ago for me is just completely, like, I just could never imagine doing that at all. And I think that the reason that I was able to do that is kind of just consistently dealing with those problems and being faced with that constantly. And then slowly just kind of learning to accept that this is who I am, rather than this is something I have to be afraid of or ashamed of, that I can't let anybody know about me. And I think that was helpful for me because it helped me become more accepting of myself.
Yeah, so perfect example. I'm going to reinterpret it using a different kind of language. So I think the problem when we hear your story is if people are struggling with the same thing, they're like, I'm insecure about my appearance. And you say, I learned to accept it. Everyone listening at home is like, how do I learn to accept it? Right? Because acceptance comes at the end. Whereas, like, I'm going to try to reinterpret this using the model that I shared with you, is I think the learning to accept it is sort of like happens towards the end. The interesting thing is that if you think about each of those moments, okay, so you have the dormant energy of insecurity. And every time you put on the beanie, that energy is not being digested. But every time you take off the beanie, I know this sounds kind of weird, but that insecure emotion comes up and is present, alive, and on in your mind.
Yeah, and if it's not, I'll read Reddit and somebody will make a comment about it again.
And so then it brings it up, and it brings it up, and it brings it up. So all of the dormant energy of the insecurity activates in the present. And if we think about even something like exposure therapy from a phobia, or we think about my kid, how do I get her to trust dogs again? How do I get her to like dogs? I have to bring up that emotion, right? It's like, oh, we're going to see, that dog's across the street. We're not going to touch it. Okay, daddy's going to go over and touch it. And that raises her anxiety a little bit. Yeah. And it's like, do you want to touch it now? And she's like, no. And then it's like, okay. And then we're going to try again tomorrow. We're going to try again tomorrow. So it's the activation of that dormant energy in the present that, when done with awareness, and this is a key part, which I think you are like grappling with yourself in those moments, right? And so that's like the awareness component. I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, in a way at the beginning, and I think also like to a certain extent, it's like I tried to be somebody that I wasn't. I tried to pretend like I was this different person. And I think that in a way, it's kind of like a negative emotion telling people that you're actually a degenerate with their teeth falling out. Like that's a negative emotion. But it's still you. It's still better to be you than pretend to be somebody else. But it's definitely not like I don't have like a better self-image because of it. If anything, I have a worse self-image. But it is what it is. It's not it's not a facade.
That is precisely. So now we're going to kind of things full circle. Because that statement that you just made is moving in on that other axis that I'm talking about. Because oddly enough, like if we think about, okay, my self-image is poor, let me fix my teeth. That's the axis of like climbing mountains, doing something external, becoming something that you're not. And what I'm hearing you say is that like I actually accept that I kind of look like a degenerate, and that actually brings me peace.
Well, that's what's bad about it, though, is because I'm okay with just living like an animal. Like I've said
he knows he's fine about living in like that, but he knows it's wrong. It's about not caring about yourself. That's what it is. And if you don't have emotional exposures to very in particular things, you'll never understand or never be in the same right in the same in the right mindset as him. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? If someone has a car crash, they know what a car crash is because they've been in it, and you haven't. And you could be like, oh yeah, but it's not that bad. And they'll be like, well, yeah, wait until you're in a car crash. It's fucking life changing. And it's like, I call it a cloud because it's easier to explain it because clouds, like, it's permanently there. It's never going to go anywhere. You're just trying to find a way around it.
No mere mortal can live with Asmongold.
Yep.
Like, I live like an absolute animal, and I don't care.
Yeah. So now we get to subtle things.
Yeah.
There's another one. So this idea that you are an animal, that's a whole other complex that also has its origins. Which, like, when you were growing up poor, it's just hypothesizing for a second, right? We could do this all day. But when you were growing up poor, like, tell me about what it was like to go to school.
Well, it would suck, right? I mean, like, sometimes it would, especially if everybody else had X or Y thing and I didn't have it. Luckily, I mean, you know, my mom did, you know, it's not like we weren't like we didn't live in the projects, right? But we were one of the poorer families in a working class neighborhood. I would say somewhere around there, like lower working class neighborhood. And so, you know, there would be many times whenever I wouldn't have something that it felt like everybody else would have, or I wouldn't be able to do something that everybody else could do, or I couldn't look forward to something that everybody else could look forward to. And it did feel bad to be like that one person that didn't have it, or that one person that couldn't do it, or whatever. Yeah. And I still think about that sometimes. It's disappointing, but I guess, like, to me now, I always have like the perspective that, as I said, I don't really have any regrets. And I, like, in a way, there'd be like small things I would go back and I would want to change in my life, but I wouldn't really want to do a whole lot of that because every moment in my life has brought me to the point where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm at a relatively good spot now. It's just that internally I'm not. Does that make sense?
See, it's why every painter hates the work they do, because they can always, they always want to change something on it, but they can't because it's already been done.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So this is where, you know, I could hypothesize further. I'm getting what you're saying, but I think this sentiment of no mere mortal can live with Asmongold is, I think, a sentiment that was born. I'm just just in the interest of time, I'm going to just toss stuff out. That sentiment was born when you thought about inviting kids over to your house after you went with their house.
It actually was born after I had a girlfriend live with me.
Okay.
But
but it's still the principle of someone else seeing how he lives, and it's like he's fine with it, and that's why the saying has come from. But I think he knows it's wrong. But that's what happens when you deep down don't really think twice about it.
Thing is, like, a lot of my friends, like, and the thing is that back then, we were complete animals, like we all were. But the thing is that they got older and they stopped being animals, but I'm just the fucking same. And, like, I still feel like I'm 16. The only time I don't feel like I'm 16 or 13 anymore is if I talk to a 16-year-old. Then I realize, oh, fuck, okay, actually, never mind, I'm 30. But outside of that, I feel the same pretty much. And I feel good. It's just that the whole world around me changed. I didn't.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really interesting combination of acceptance and coping.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
I think it's tough because I think what you've managed to do is, like, survive. And so a lot of what I'm hearing is, like, you've accepted yourself for who you are because rejecting yourself is too painful. But in accepting yourself for who you are, you're also propagating things that I think you know aren't good for you, which you're also working on.
No, yeah, that's what the problem is, right? Is like I should not be okay with a number of things. Like I know that like internally, you know, my head's fucked up in that way.
Yeah, so to explain how you overcome that, you actually, it's kind of weird. You have to go back to bringing up that negative emotion. Because as long as you say to yourself, no mere mortal can live with Asmongold, you're kind of laughing off the shamefulness of your situation.
Exactly. He knows.
But I don't feel any shame.
Exactly. That's the problem. And until you feel that shame, right? So like, since you don't feel that shame, you're propagating the life because this is the way that you ignore the shame.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like I just never had it. It never bothered me at all. And it's so weird to me because like other people, they will latch on and care so much about having this thing or having, X or Y, like object or something like that. And for me, I just don't care about any of it. It doesn't matter to me. Like, it doesn't matter if I have a nice car. It doesn't matter to me if I have a nice house. I don't need nice clothes. I wear the same clothes I wore in high school. And none of these things matter to me at all.
Yeah,
I don't care about the same things other people care about.
I'm not sure how much of this is acceptance and attachment and how much of it is a coping mechanism blown out of proportion.
Yeah, how you are.
What I'm hearing,
I can buy it if I want it. I just don't care.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So there are many reasons that people cannot care about something.
Yeah.
Right? They can learn to not care about it, or they can be detached from it.
Well, so here's kind of I think that there's another experience that kind of might shed some insight onto this. Whenever I was young, I did care about these things a lot. They were very, very meaningful to me. Like what I was saying before about having everything. Like, I wanted to have like nice clothes, name brand clothes, things like that. And many times my mom and I would go to a thrift store, and I wouldn't be able to have like those same kinds of brand new clothes that my other friends would have. Now, many times I did also have nice clothes as well, but it just wasn't really to the same degree, and especially with other things that cost more money. And I went to a school in high school initially where it was much more of like an upscale school. Many more people had, that kind of stuff. And I didn't really fit in there. And I realized that the people that were in that society that cared about those things were not like me. And that kind of got me to not care about those things as much as I did then. Because I saw people that, kind of attached themselves to those things and cared about those things a lot. And I looked at myself and I'm like, this is not who I am.
That sounds to me like acceptance and growth.
I would say so. I mean, I would hope so, at least.
Yeah. So I'm not detecting that this is some weird coping mechanism in terms of like being not materialistic. Ironically, if we look at your karmic temperament, it's interesting because I think being born. So what you just described, Asmongold, is actually would be interpreted by some of my teachers as a sign of past spiritual work. So that there's a certain, so it's interesting because like in the Hindu gaming system, or Buddhist, less so of the Buddhist, but more in the Hindu, that essentially like you don't carry over your gear, you don't carry over your stats, but you carry over your XP between incarnations. And what you're describing to me is a generally non-materialistic sentiment, which would be interpreted by some of my teachers as a sign of past spiritual work, which oddly enough is oftentimes coupled with a lot of material success and is sort of the formula. This is why like Buddha was sort of the same way too, and he was born as a prince. So his karma was like picking a spawn point where you can continue to grow spiritually, and you carry some of your XP with you. So this is something that I've just seen time and again. I don't know if this is like a bias on my part where I'm looking for it, so therefore I find it. But I oftentimes find that people who are not very materialistic and are quite materialistically successful and unhappy despite their materialistic success wind up in conversations with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that's the reason why.
Where people are stuck.
I of course, that makes sense.
Now, just to kind of, I'm going to try to close the loop and maybe wrap things up and give you a direction to go. Does that sound okay to you, or would you like to kind of? Okay. So I think going forward, Zach, if I had to make one recommendation for you, it would be to really explore this theme of powerlessness in your life. And so, like, have there been times or moments where you felt that inevitability of decay? And I recognize that it manifests in gaming and in your life, but I'd really think about these moments like when you couldn't call an ambulance. Like, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about, right? There's a sense of like, there is, no matter how hard you try and what you do, there's nothing. No amount of your effort will succeed. And as you track back and discover those moments in your life, I know you've tried to jump in twice now. As you track back and try to find those moments in your life, and as you actually, if you can evoke that feeling of powerlessness in the present, my hypothesis is that your fear of decay will go with it.
So how do I evoke a moment of powerlessness without having control over the powerlessness, making the paradox, mean it's irrelevant? Because like if you that's what's confusing to me. Like how do you memory?
Yeah. So the way you evoke the feeling is because the emotion is going to be dormant. So the problem is that have you ever worked with a therapist, by the way?
Never.
So I think if you wanted to see a therapist, I think this is what you could work on with someone. So like, you're going to go in week after week after week, and you're going to talk about these experiences. And if you find a decent therapist, they're going to find ways to ask you questions that are going to evoke emotion. Because I don't know if you can...
Instead of keeping it buried, bring them up, talk about it. That's how you know it's okay.
But over the course of this entire conversation, we keep on moving away from emotion by talking intellectually and philosophically.
Yep.
Well, how do you talk in terms of emotion?
Say it as it is.
Because like for me, I just, the emotions are there. Yeah, I mean, it made me feel bad. I don't really know exactly how much more I can describe about it. I'm not a very...
Let me think about whether... So I can't tell you the answer to that question. I have to show you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because telling you the answer to the question is operating on an intellectual level and moving in the opposite direction that we need to.
Yeah.
It's
like even talking about it makes it irrelevant in a way.
But you need to say.
Yeah. So I think it's like slow conversations where, sometimes when I interview people, like, emotions come out. I think you have a interesting natural damage resistance from being on the road to enlightenment. And then you have an additional coping mechanism, which sort of like suppresses and buries some of those emotions.
Yeah.
The third thing that could be going on is that these circuits of your brain are suppressed by playing video games.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's part of that. I mean, I think that it's also like, I don't want to let go of things that I had. I think that's definitely what it is. I'm very attached to things that I had. And, I remember I saw a friend of mine. I'd never seen this guy. I haven't seen this guy since like high school. And it was the day before I came back to streaming, like last year, I think. And I remember I talked to him, and this is going to sound absolutely degenerate, and that's because it is. But I always told the story of a friend of mine who drew a female dragon masturbating on a chalkboard on the first day of school. And he was the guy that did that. And I mentioned it to him, and he remembered it. And that meant so much to me because nobody else in the whole world thought that shit was true. Nobody else thought that was true. And I remember seeing him.
And then you live with it until either that person or somebody remembers it as just as you, so you're not fucking weird.
Drove home and I cried in the car because I got a chance to
talk about it,
to remember that it was real.
Yep. See, there's a lot of stuff people keep on their own minds until the time they could. It's like a checkbook, and all the stuff on there will stay on there forever, unless you see it. Or unless, like, you know what I mean? Unless the answer is there that you see, or like, I don't know, like a school friend had a fucking I don't know, like a fucking toy submarine or something, and then like that will permanently be on like someone's brain, or like a certain smell, a certain time playing, like in preschool, or like it's kind of the same reason why people buy a lot of stuff they had as a childhood to try and relive those memories. It's the same thing, but you still live your whole life like thinking about it. Like it's stored in a memory bank in your brain until you either see it. So for instance, I was in a charity shop, which is a thrift shop, and I was I as a child I had a toy gun, it was like a ball gun, and I remember so fucking much of this, like playing with it. Like I remember more playing with it when I was like 4 or 5 than I do like yesterday. Like shit I done yesterday, or where I drove yesterday, or whatever. Like it's absolutely fucking crazy. And then I don't know what happened to it. I remember the color. I know what it looked like. I know what it fucking, you know what I mean? I knew all about it. And then I would speak to my brothers, and they knew about it. So I walked into this charity shop, this thrift shop, which I used to go in like maybe once a day, every day. You know what I mean? Just see what's in there. And I don't know what the fuck it was, but my fucking eyeballs were like magnets, and they fucking locked onto that thing. And I fucking saw it. And I didn't give a fuck who was in front of me. I barged everyone out of the fucking way. I picked it up, and I was like, oh my god. And I felt a emotion of, I got it. And it's actually on top of a wardrobe now. And it was a feeling of self-satisfaction of that it's not just a memory anymore. It's about something that I actually have, like, because it was real.
You know, this sounds weird, Zach, but like, I don't know exactly where that story comes from, but what I'm hearing from you is the way to do what I'm telling you to do.
Wait, and it wasn't just like that moment. That moment is just like one thing, right? But it was like everything about that, you know, the life that we lived, just everything.
Yeah.
It was great.
The moment, the vibe, the feeling.
I give anything to go back there.
Yeah.
What
are you feeling now?
Sad.
That was half my life ago.
Yeah.
I feel like it wasn't. Like it feels like it was the I mean, obviously, it was a while ago now, unfortunately, but it felt it just sucks, man. You can never go back.
Yeah.
So I could see emotion coming up.
Yeah.
And you got to watch out for Twitch chat, because they're going to bury it.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Oh yeah.
So like something.
He's trying hard.
You shared a story.
Yeah.
And then you felt emotion.
Yeah, I do.
Isn't
buried.
Yeah.
It's gone now.
You have to.
You see that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never really been a particularly emotional person. Yep. I feel like any time that I show my emotions, it's not good. They're mostly bad. Mostly bad emotions.
Yeah. So I think we've got to teach you how to let that stuff out.
Yeah.
And I when I said I wasn't optimistic, but I think you just did it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? And it's weird, but like as you told that story, like we were just talking about something, you tell this story about.
It's feeling comfortable.
You know, a friend of yours who drew a picture of.
I want to really emphasize, because it sounds fucking weird, that it was not really about the moment itself. It's what the moment represented.
Yeah. How it was, how it felt
and
at the time.
All the justifications in the world are going to move away from the emotion. You don't have to justify anything. This is just like, I don't know why, but you just did it. When you ask me how do I do it, I don't know. You just did.
Yeah, you have to let it out.
And this is what it's weird. It's just you have to go back to the memory, and like something about sharing that with him in that moment
unlocked it
for things that you had started to doubt and push away and buried came up. And it's painful, but it's cathartic.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
So
It's
you
like
just
I never thought I'd see him again.
yeah
I
yeah.
never thought it would happen.
So there are all kinds of interpretations we can make there. Like,
Yeah.
so for example, the power of that moment is something that you thought was inevitable became not inevitable. That
Exactly.
you would never get closure. And so we can see how that's powerful for you because, like, what's your problem? It's that the inevitable is inevitable. And here's a chance, here's a moment where that doesn't have to be the case. And it's like painful, but it's also hopeful.
Okay, I can see that.
I don't know. I mean, that's an interpretation, but that also is like me going intellectually. Like, I don't know if that's actually fucking true or not. The point, though, is I don't know what you just did, but you need to do more of it.
Yeah, 100%. That's
Yeah,
how you
maybe.
find
I
yourself.
mean, I don't know. It just sucks.
Stop.
Like it's sad because
It is, and it will always be the negative side. The negative doesn't always mean bad. It just means something that you don't wanna do. You feel like it's not right. You're a fucking man, which is the biggest fucking one of them all. Imagine how he feels right now. He's on Twitch, probably 20,000+ people watching him, plus talking to a guy never spoke to, and now he's, because the guy is on the same level as Asmond, he's comfortable. He's not. If I go back to the very beginning, you'll see what I mean. He's hesitant, but in a nice way, because he doesn't know how it's going to go. He doesn't know if he's going to be judged, if he's going to be told this is right, this is wrong. So sometimes it's just best to allow someone to talk. You know what I mean? It's okay to take some pictures and then put them into a photo book, but the book's not full. And once the book is full, you get another book, because life carries on.
it's like I used to be like really happy about that kind of shit, and now I don't really have that same experience anymore. And I don't know, like, and I feel like I can never have that back because it was the context of my life, you know?
Yeah. And that's the sad part, because you'll never experience it again.
It's like my parents were healthy. I didn't have to worry about a job. I didn't have to worry about a bunch of other weird bullshit. It was just me and the boys hanging out all the time, drawing dragons on a chalkboard and, riding the bus home together, singing along to rap songs.
Yeah.
And that was good. It really was good.
How are your parents, Zach?
Could be better.
Yeah. It's a shame.
Could be worse. They're all right.
I'll wait.
Doesn't sound like they're all right.
Well, the thing is, there's a degree of all right. It's kind of like
It's all right.
So you're
Okay,
pivoting away. You're going down the wrong side of the mountain.
well, let me explain what I'm saying. Right, is like remember what I was saying before about how like things get worse so slowly that you don't realize that they're happening, and then you slowly just accept how bad that they are.
Yeah.
There's a day that my mom started using a cane to walk around. That was really painful for me to see.
Yeah.
And it really hurt me a lot. But because it's happened for a while, I don't feel the same level of visceral reaction whenever I see her doing it now.
What was it like to see your mom walk with a cane for the first time?
Destroying.
It is terrible. It's horrible.
What was terrible about it?
Because she's getting
it's
old.
like it's one step
before death.
down that mountain.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or a number of steps. And it wasn't like it was.
I understand what he's doing. He's getting him to talk. I understand that, but
It isn't like a really emotional feeling, I guess. It was just like kind of
realization. It's settled in.
Like it was just. I don't know. I can't really even describe it.
So I think, Zach, this is going to take some work, right? So
yeah.
I think, but I do still feel optimistic that there are too many things here that seem quite familiar to me that I've seen end in a good place.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a relief.
Yep.
Right. So I think part of the issue here is that as you say, I can't describe it. So like,
Yeah, I'd have
once
to throw.
you're like, yeah, and that's the problem is like, it's not about thinking about it. Like, I don't know, because thinking about it isn't the right thing. I'm going to go back to the dragon on the chalkboard as an example.
Yeah.
There are certain ways, they're like shortcuts, level skips.
Mhm.
And like something about that story was like the secret tunnel at the end of the Mario Brothers level that warps you to World 4. And it's not a logical chain, and you can logically chain it out as much as you want to, and that's not going to be that effective. Mm-hmm. The real thing is digging around for those level skips. And when you had that level skip, the emotion came right up. Like it was like, I mean, I think everyone saw it.
It's the
like,
miss of the time.
And
it's sad. Because like you can just for a moment go back. You can just for a moment go back and realize how good it used to be.
Yep.
So I'm also hearing themes of not just powerlessness and inevitability, but of loss. Right?
Yeah, I would say so.
And so that's also worth digging into. I think, Zach, of all the people that we've talked to on stream, I would strongly recommend that you really think about finding someone to do this kind of work.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I try to I try not to think about it as much as I can.
It's not the answer though.
And
you're just
maybe I should try to think about it more.
Yeah, you're prolonging it.
Yeah, so maybe thinking about it isn't the right move. Working on it. But by all means think about it. I think it's your I don't know if you play D&D, but you've got an 18 on int.
Well, thanks.
But this is where like I don't know what your wisdom is, right? Like there's some other dimension of your being which I think you over rationalize, intellectualize, and philosophize to get away from your kind of like emotional stuff. But if you want to think about it, by all means go for it.
Well, yeah, it's like you spend time with yourself processing it. It's like you'll lay in bed. Like a lot of times I'll lay in bed without even no music, not on my phone. And I'll just kind of experience myself, It's like a form of, I guess, like uncultured meditation.
Happy place.
Yeah. Uncultured. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see. Yeah. How unrefined do you think you are?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of techniques and things like that you can deal with, but it's hard to. It's. Sorry, I was thinking of something. There are a lot of techniques that you can use, and it's hard to really know what works and what doesn't. Of course.
Yep. And that's why I would encourage you to seek guidance from someone who's maybe a little bit more experienced and who can show you what the right technique is.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I've thought about, like, I try to, like, a lot of times I would try to, like, watch videos about, like, video games and stuff like that. And this is kind of not really the same thing, but it's kind of the same type of idea of, like, bettering yourself. And nowadays I will always try to watch videos and do things and read about things that kind of matter, I guess, to an extent, like history and, mathematics and stuff like that. And I've tried to learn more and be a better version of myself, just so I can process things better and think and have the ability to have that knowledge. Like for me, I'm lucky in a way that I have a very good memory, but I waste that memory on remembering video games.
Yeah, the past. But that's the enjoyment. That's when you had the fun.
Yeah, I'm getting all kinds of weird signals from you.
I know.
I don't mean that to be judgmental, but it's just, it feels like we're opening up new avenues of conversation.
Yeah.
Because now I have questions like, are you proud of yourself? Or other people proud of you?
Other people are.
Are you proud of yourself?
I've done some good things. It's all right. Could be better. It always can be better.
So that's a no.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
it is.
I think that I'd say it's like
it is, because it's like when I played Resident Evil 2 when I was 5 or 6, and my brother goes, I know what could really help, and then he gets this grey Explorer cheat thing and sticks it in the back of the PS1 and gives me all the guns, but doesn't give me unlimited life. I'm thinking, not a problem. You know what I mean? And like, it's the same thing. Or finishing Fable. Or completed every single fucking campaign on every Call of Duty, except for Black Ops 6. I haven't got around to it yet. That's an achievement. Knowing when something goes wrong with the car, and I fix it, that's an achievement. But then there was asking someone, like, are you kind of proud of yourself? And then there's like a serious side of, are you proud of yourself? And yeah, the answer is no.
Let me tell you what that is. That's a no cloaked in coping and positivity.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I mean, no, it's a no. It's an intellectualized no, because like I've succeeded in a number of things on a very real level, right? Like I've done this, I've done that, I've succeeded at this, I've succeeded at that. Like all of these things are things that I'm proud of, but at the same time, I feel like I could do more, or I'm not living up to what potential that I have in my own mind.
The question isn't whether you've done things that you can be proud of. The question is, are you proud of yourself?
Yeah, but that's taking his entire life, that as far back as he remembers, and said, are you proud of yourself? And you think, well, I didn't call that ambulance. I probably wasn't very nice to that friend. You know what I mean? What spectrum are you asking? Because life is a big fucking thing.
I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't know.
Yeah, it's too big
like,
of a question.
I would obviously, like, the first thing that I would say is no and yes. Because I've been very happy, in a lot of ways, like hanging out with my friends, like doing what I want to do, etc. But is that something to be proud of? Do you have to be proud of yourself to be fulfilled?
Yeah, so
because like a lot of the sense of pride is like pride in general, like in this case to some degree, is like a construct that exists in context of society. So like, am I proud of, these accomplishments that I've had in real life? Well, yes, to an extent. But these accomplishments that I have in real life are constructs that exist in society. These are not things that are internal. These are not
for yourself.
It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, they're not for yourself. You've done it.
Yeah, so when I ask you a question about whether you have pride in yourself, how do you answer?
Well, the answer is very simple. I don't know. And like, I'm proud of some things, I'm not of others. I think that's probably, and it's a shit answer. 100%, it's a shit answer, but like, there it is.
Yeah. So I think I'm sort of feeling like I don't know that we're going to get to somewhere very productive from this conversation. I think that these are all important conversations. I'm sort of taxed at this point. I feel like I'm
Yeah, I'm probably go lay down afterwards.
And so what I would say to you, Zach, is that like when I ask you a question about your feelings, your answer appears to be philosophical or intellectual in nature. You start talking about constructs in society, whereas what I'm like, pride is an emotion. Right?
Well, the emotion
Shame is an emotion.
I mean, aren't they the same thing?
What?
Well, like
Intellectual constructs in
yeah,
society
yeah.
and pride?
Yeah,
No.
well, yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, in a way, right? Because you have like shame, and like, so if you're ashamed of not having a nice car or something like that, that's completely a society construct. That's not something that really means a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. Doesn't really mean a lot as a person. Doesn't make you grow
It's
as a
too big
person.
of a
This
spectrum
just
to
exists
fucking
as a
to give one answer.
thing that you do to make society want to care
it's
about
too
you.
big. You can't do that.
No.
Okay.
So shame is a subjective experience. Can shame be caused by certain societal things? Absolutely. But shame is within. Right? So, like, for example, depending on the societal construct, I can be ashamed of my skin color or my grades or the clothes that I wear. Completely agree. But the experience of shame for those 5 people, depending on the societal constructs, is still subjective. It's an experience of emotion. Is it triggered by societal constructs? Do societal constructs have something to do with it? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, like, anger or emotion is not a societal construct. Emotion can be triggered by a societal construct, sure. Are certain people's neurons wired to elicit particular emotions based on certain societal constructs? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, I think what I'm hearing from you is that when we go towards emotion, your mind interprets, intellectualizes, rationalizes. And if we think about the story of the chalkboard, there's no interpretation there. It's just raw emotion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of context behind it. Of course, I mean, because, like, I mean, there's a lot of like actual like things that happened. Yeah.
But like concepts in the mind are of fundamentally different stuff than emotions in the mind. It's like woodworking and like, alchemy. Like, it's different stuff, different mats.
Yeah.
And what I find is that you tend to always go towards the intellectualization, the philosophization, which I think is absolutely one of your strengths, one of your coping mechanisms, and one of the ways that your neurons is wired.
Yeah.
And that I think that you're going to gain a lot. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to logic your way out of the fear of decay, which is really what I'd call it. It's not death. It's like the powerlessness and inevitability. Or maybe you can, actually. You can. But I think that you're going to get far better results by learning, like picking up a different secondary skill on your WoW character, because you can chug potions to increase all your stats, but at some point it's just more efficient to craft yourself some armor and put that shit on.
It lasts longer.
And what I'm hearing is that you're a grandmaster potion maker who's trying to make potions instead of wearing armor.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that.
Stop trying to run before you can crawl. I think that's what it is.
I think for me, like, there have been emotions like shame and things like that I've had to overcome. And like, I said about going to that school and then feeling ashamed of myself. And so I've gotten through some of those things for sure. But some other ones not as much.
Big. It's just too big of
I think it's just a new skill that you can learn.
Yeah.
And I think if you have questions or more, if you want more detailed information about that, like, I feel kind of spent at the moment, so I don't know, but I'd say that, feel free to like sleep on it, or I need to sleep on it. And if you're kind of curious about that or want to learn more, just, ping us. I think generally speaking, when people come on stream, I think we'll send you like a packet of information about potentially like put options for follow-up and how to find a therapist and things like that if you're curious about that. But overall, I think, I really can, I feel like I understand a lot of what you're going through, and I don't think it is quite as inevitable, and I think it's solvable. I think you're walking a difficult road, but it's a road that many people have walked before, and you seem to have a lot of the karmic signs that other people who have walked this road have walked.
Okay. All right.
A tendency for not being materialistic, a lot of worldly success early in life
Yeah.
and a sense of dissatisfaction. That's the spiritual road. And laying on top of that I think you're going to have to process is more of like a neuronal, psychological, like fear of decay and inevitability and being powerless in the face of certain things. Which, if we really think about it, sounds like the fear of death, but the more that we tunnel into it, we actually discover that when faced with death, you're a Chad, you know? And so, like, as terrifying as that is, like, you actually know how to accept, you know how to accept parts of yourself, you know how to face death, actually, with some degree of terror and grounding.
Yeah, there were a number of times when I was younger, I would do things that would get me pretty close to it.
Yep.
Or pretty close to at least a lot of material harm. Yeah.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
is another thing that I find myself being curious about, but don't think I have the mana for the encounter.
Oh, don't worry. If you did, I wouldn't cast a spell.
Yeah. Don't walk across the bridge if you can't read the sign.
Zach, are you okay with our conversation today?
Yeah, I'm great. I really appreciate you bringing me on and talking about it. I hope that, you know, I talk about these things, and the reason why I come on is I think that the idea of this is that I think it's important to have people put themselves out there and show that this kind of stuff like mental health and just
real.
to a greater
It's
extent, being able to talk about your problems. And I think people will watch what I say and then they will relate to it, and that will help them. So even if it might make me look weird or look bad, the greater good for it is worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do you think you look bad?
I think so. I think anytime that a person reveals their emotions at all, there are a lot of people that
we'll see it as bad.
that resent that.
Yeah.
Do you think you look bad?
No.
Okay. I don't think you look bad at all.
It is what
Thank
it
you.
is, and unfortunately, imagine. Obviously, this isn't like a couple of years of his life. This is an entire fucking life. This video is 3 years old, and I can tell from a newer video he's a lot better. But it's true. It's like, it's absolutely fucking crazy to not only go into a fucking shower, because how much money he raised, I think it was about $140,000 for charity, and yet he deals with these psychological issues himself, but to go into a shower to shower for a charity like event is absolutely fucking crazy. It's crazy in the mental side of it, and how you have to kind of put your entire mental capabilities to one side and go, do you know what? A lot of people are going to see, and actually it's going to improve a lot of people for 10-15 minutes of being silly or stupid and having a shower and obviously raising all this kind of money. Like, you know what I mean? Just that 10 minutes of that has made years and years of people's lives a little bit easier. I take my fucking hat off to him. I really fucking do. And like I've said in many videos before about how Zach is, when I first started watching Zach, I knew straight a fucking way. I don't know how, but I knew straight away something wasn't ticking. You know what I mean? The clock battery was dying a little bit. It wasn't ticking that great. So I think that's kind of why I feel I can relate to him in many, many, many ways. And obviously, but this is only a fraction of what he has to deal with and what he has to think, or actually what it thinks for him, because you'd be surprised what it would do. As always, massive thank you to Zach. If he probably wouldn't, but if he ever knows about these videos I've made, I'll probably cut this video into two because it's like over 2 hours long. Yeah, and obviously Dr. K and Asmongold, I'll put their stuff in the description. Yeah, if you need to talk to someone, just Google what you can, where you live. I'm sure you'll find somewhere and find someone. You know what I mean? Most of the time in the UK there is a free number. Yeah, and it's not wrong. It's nothing to be ashamed about, because where there is a person, generally they will listen. And sometimes that's all people need, is someone just to listen to what you're saying.
You're quite handsome.
Well, at least that's one of us, right?
Oh.
I appreciate it.
All right, Zach, thank you very much. I hope you have fun playing Burning Crusade.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I hope you get more enjoyment out of New World in 3 days. I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Really
I was anyway.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Go ahead.
Maybe once you find inner peace, you can start developing games for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been. I like the idea of making games sometimes, but I took a coding class and it didn't go too well. So I think I'd have to be the idea guy there, the vision person.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we'll see.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.
All right. See ya.
Peace.
Let's. Okay.
Yeah. So, wow. Like I said, I'll put the link to this video. I'll put a link to Asmongold anyway. I mean, one of his many hundreds of videos anyway. Yeah, like I said, there is someone that will obviously answer your calls. You know, I mean, you don't have to live in silence. So, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.